What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a spoiler-filled discussion for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the last film that James Gunn is directing for Marvel Cinematic Universe, as well as the last in the trilogy. This is a spoiler-filled discussion, so there will be spoilers about the whole entire movie, so just be aware. So, as we're aware, James Gunn is, of course, going to the DC Universe. He is no longer going to be working with Marvel. He's now the president of DC. And that's sad because it kind of conforms James Gunn to one area. He's never going to come back to this universe. But as we've learned from the past, there's been some problems and just the whole tweeting situation, all that good stuff. He got fired and got brought back. So there is some stuff in this movie that really feels like kind of a dig at Marvel and Disney in a lot of respects. But that's just what James Gunn's known for doing. But he's a very talented director, as we know. And this movie is basically a Rocket movie. I mean, spoiler alert, this is a movie about Rocket, his origins, the way to try and save Rocket. The bad guy is actually closely tied to Rocket himself. He's, of course, called the High Visionary, or whatever he's called. Anyways, he's the main bad guy, and so on and so forth. And basically what the story is Rocket gets mortally wounded by, of course, Adam Warlock, who's played by, of course, William Poulter, and they have to find a kill switch key to save him because there's a thing on his heart that could kill him if they tried to save him like a normal way. So that's the basic gist of this movie, is they're going after it. The High Visionary, or whatever you want to call him, is actually chasing after. He sent Adam Warlock and the Sovereign to go after this creature, this Rocket character. And it basically becomes like a journey for these characters to have one last hurrah before they go off into the ether, or whatever they do in the next phases of Marvel, or whatever Disney and Kevin Feige wanted to do with them. So I've had some time to think about this movie. I did a video earlier where I talked about how much I didn't like it. I also did my spoiler talk already. I recorded it already, but I had to think about this movie because I was really hard on it. I didn't really like this movie, and I still don't really like this movie, but give it some time, see if let it marinate, see how you feel about it. And I will say this about this movie. I think it works half the time and doesn't work the other half of the time. And what I mean by that is when it focuses on the characters and their search for to save Rocket, and then Rocket's origin story, it's really well done, to be fairly honest. It's some of the most meaningful stuff that the MCU has ever done, because Rocket's a character that was very hardcore, was very like gung-ho. He was a character that it felt like there was like nothing to him. There's no kind of substance to him in a lot of respects. He felt like, he had grew, but he was just a character that was well beloved just because of his mannerisms, how Bradley Cooper talked. But this movie, as been discussed by James Gunn and other people, wanted to go to the origins of what Rocket was and how he became who he was. And it allows this character to not only grow and be dimensional, but also gives a feeling of empathy for a character that may not have had empathy to begin with. And it allows these characters to really assess who they are, what they are, and where they need to go into the future. So it's always been kind of funny. And if you think about it through the entire trilogy, Rocket's always felt like more of the leader than even Peter Quill has, because of the simple fact that Rocket's more headstrong, he's more forceful, he can get the job done, he knows how to work around it, he's very talented at what he does. It's the unfortunate joke where you have to throw in there, yes, he's from America, he's from North America. It kind of it disperses the joke a little bit, but you learn later on, like the High Visionary actually, the reason he built Counter Earth is because he went to Earth and he felt like he could do better. His intentions are meaningful and meaning in a lot of respects, but they're just like, once again, they're just another villain character that's misguided and doesn't really have any substance to it. This is not a movie about the High Visionary, to be fairly honest. It's a movie about Rocket and how his story plays out. It's just the High Visionary happens to be closely related with Rocket, with the simple fact that that's how Rocket became, with like the mechanisms, stuff like that. We see how he garners friends, Rocket's character, with those three characters who are like a whale, an otter, and a rabbit. And they feel like the characters out of like Toy Story with Sid's, like how he like manipulate characters and stuff like that. And it's very powerful stuff. It really is. It really gives a lot of meaning and depth to why Rocket's such a special character when they use him in the right context, because he's always been played as that kind of side character. That there's more to it than it really says. And every character in this movie learns about what Rocket went through and how this corporation. This is a problem with comic books movies in general. Is when new villains get kind of brought into the mix, comics, they're kind of only shown through one movie. So even though the whatever character that what's his face Lee Pace played in the first movie, yes, he pops up later on in one of the other movies, but it just, you never get a sense of these characters, like where they come from, how they come from, what they are, what their purpose, what everything about it. And that's the same thing with the High Visionary. It's just, it feels like such a character that's just kind of brought in to have some kind of foil, and I was never really on board with the character at all. Yeah, he's really cool looking with like the skin, how it's like peeled back and stuff like that, and there's like mechanical technology in a lot of respects on his head and stuff like that. That's really cool. I like the idea of using tech and technology in a very like a cyberpunky way, which is what James Gunn is adding into this corporation, and I like that stuff, but it's never fully really explained. It's never fully developed. The only purpose it serves is just to find Rocket and use him and to kind of get his brain, as we learn, because he is able to solve a puzzle of sorts that will make all these creatures like subservient and stuff like that. Because, for instance, when we go to Earth, the counter Earth, all these creatures that were taken from Earth in a lot of respects or taken from other planets are now humanoid-like creatures, now anthropomorphic in a lot of respects. And that stuff it's intriguing, but it feels like a separate movie that just needed its own kind of context in a lot of respects. Maybe like a TV series where we learn about this. I would love a TV series with the High Visionary and all these characters and how it plays out and the kind of the growth to it to add context and subtext, because similar to what they did with a lot of the other TV series, there is some subtext and context that's added in. Actually, in Star Wars, it's a perfect example. Like Rogue One and Andor, there's subtext and context and all that stuff added in to allows that, like stuff like Attack of the Clones, allows stuff like Revenge of the Sith, allows stuff like Thor: The Dark World that have more like substance to it. And that's what I hope they can do here, but I doubt they will, because they're kind of cutting back on what Marvel needs, which is probably a good thing. Maybe it'll help fix the problem that Marvel is having right now, which I haven't even gotten into the main problem with this movie. But I really, like I said, I go back to the Rocket stuff. It's just really powerful stuff. It actually tugs at your heartstrings because it's a character that just is given a lot of depth. And I think you can see James Gunn, who is as has been said, is very much a loving of animals, of creatures. So you get that, you get the idea of like how hard it is for him to have do what he does in this movie, which is kill a bunch of creatures and stuff like that. So you could tell that there is a lot of subtext and kind of context about what James Gunn is doing and stuff like that. So I found that really powerful stuff. It's like it's one of the stronger things in the MCU, and it's very dark and disturbing and very uncomfortable to watch because of the nature of what the High Visionary, Evolutionary, whatever he's called, is doing. But then you get into like the Mantis stuff. Mantis and Drax have always palm Klementieff, and of course David Bautista have always, since the second movie, have like worked well off one another, and they work well off one another in this movie. There's a kind of love for one another, even though they, Mantis is always making fun of Drax and stuff like that. Drax takes it, and she is doing like kind of like what Black Widow did with the Hulk, where she's like making him forget and stuff like that. That stuff works. It's fun. It's lighthearted. I love Mantis. I love what Palm is doing in this movie. She's very good at what she does. She's very talented at this character, and I can't wait to see her in Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning and stuff like that. But I love everything that they do with her in this movie. I love everything they do with Drax in this movie, because once again, like Rocket, there is subtext and context that's not there in the first and second movies with these characters, and they're allowed to give more depth. For instance, Drax, we finally get him with a lot more substance, a lot more heart. And the simple fact of when like they rescue the kids, he's able to talk to the kids, he's able to relate to the kids. We see that he, even though he's a soldier, he has some heart. It's similar to like God of War to God of War, like the God of War original to the God of War of 2017 or whatever, 2018. Drax started out as the original God of War, that similar kind of type of character type, and now he's turned into like somebody who you could trust, depend on, and really has some emotional core to him. And I love that scene with him and the kids, because it allows that character to be justifiable in his nature and everything. And there's something about Dave Bautista as an actor that really makes him shine. And there's something about James Gunn as a director that is able to take people like John Cena, Dave Bautista, even Sylvester Stallone, and just make it work. It's actually kind of mind-boggling or mind-blowing in a lot of respects how good Dave Bautista is as an actor in this film and a lot of these films. It's pretty impressive, to be fairly honest. And you see that through this whole entire movie. It really, really does work. So, and another thing that works, and like I said, I'm getting all the positives out of the way because I do want to talk about negatives of this movie, but another positive is there's no director out there that can do what James Gunn does when it comes to the creative sensibilities of the weirdness, the out there-ness, the nature of like, spacefaring, like sci-fi adventures and stuff like that. He is very of that trauma type where, the movies and stuff that he's directed and written and so on and so forth are very just kind of awe-inspiring to watch. They're very beautiful to watch. You look at that organic planet that they go to get the try and find the code key for the kill switch on Rocket, and it's just like this weird organic kind of odd looking thing. It's straight out of a comic book movie. It looks like a comic book movie or a comic book character. And it's just like the goopiness and the squishiness and like how the characters, it's very much like Luc Besson when he did Fifth Element. Those costumes like that we see Nathan Fillion wear and the other characters wear, it feels very much like that very avant-garde, like out there kind of look. And that's just like that whole kind of aesthetic that what James Gunn has set up for Guardians of the Galaxy. Because if you think about it, like in the beginning, the characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe before Guardians came around were very kind of toned down, very of the Earth situation. They, very what we recognize. But when James Gunn is like thrown into the mix and he directs Guardians of the Galaxy, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 with Ego and stuff like that, there's an aesthetic that is nothing like this universe. And they've tried with Thor and stuff like that. It just doesn't work, but it works like tremendously here with like the different set pieces and stuff like that. You can tell that James Gunn is very much inspired by like the weird kind of crazy sci-fi stories of the 50s and 60s, how just out there it was, and just how like strange and unusual, as they say in Beetlejuice, how it's just a very cool aesthetic. And it's just like watching them bounce off this like organic planet or this organic structure, and when they go into the organic structure and just how weird it is. It's so strange. It really feels like a very 50s style weirdness to it, like a 50s style horror sci-fi style. And when they go to like the counter Earth, and just how everything feels like it's very off of Earth, but it feels like Earth, but it's very like almost like everything feels like a set. It feels like a Tim Burton set in a lot of respects. How it just everything feels just slightly off and slightly like fantastical in a lot of respects. But there's enough there that it does feel slightly earthy in a lot of respects. But then you have the creatures and you have how they play out. The technology and stuff like that. So all that works and all that feels just right. And then you get into like everything else is whatever, it just we'll get to that in a second. But I do have to say that James Gunn does have a style, and it's very, very different than what everybody is known for, and I just feel like it works. I really do. So those are my main positives of this movie. I feel like there's more stuff that's positive. I do think the score really works. I think whoever did the score really helps this movie a lot, and I think it's just shot very well. If there's a lot of like outside of just like the slow motion stuff, which I think they could have done without. James Gunn has this weird thing about doing slow motion with his like hero characters, but they do a lot of panning around, and there's like a really cool action sequence which feels like Kingsman in a lot of respects. So it's just like one big one take action sequence, which a lot of it's CGI, a lot of it's like implemented with camera work and stuff like that. But I just love how this action sequence just goes from one character to another. We see similar to like the Volume 2 with that opening sequence and stuff like that. So I really have to give a lot of credit for that one action sequence, which I thought was pretty awesome. Now, I do have to get into some negatives of this movie because it is, once again, two halves of a movie, I feel like. I feel like Peter Quill. I feel like Gamora. I feel like Nebula. Groot's Groot. I feel like the Ravagers. I feel like Craggle. Is it Craggle, whatever his name is. Cosmo. All these characters are fine. I think Cosmo is fine. It's Maria Bakalova doing the voice, which I thought was interesting. The fact that they focus on Rocket's characters so dramatically in this movie, as much as I appreciate Chris Pratt and Zoe Saldana and stuff like that, and James Gunn's brother is Kraglin or whatever, and there's some heart there, and he's learning how to use the whistle and stuff like that. I don't like their characters at all in this movie. I really don't. I think they're annoying. I think they're misused. I think the idea of using Nowhere as like a planet of like a weapon is really stupid. I think the decisions to make like Peter Quill just like this, doting, like angry individual who's just upset because Gamora doesn't remember him. I mean, you're the one that made the mistake. You're the one that caused the problem. problem in the beginning with Endgame, and I don't care about it. That was like how many years ago at this point? 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, whatever it's been. And I feel like they're going back to the same well with his character. He was such an interesting character in the first movie, Peter Quill, and now he's just like a side character relegated to the boringness of the world. And I never really felt on board with him. I never felt like his character had any meaning. The fact that Zoe Saldana's Gamora character is just working with the Ravagers, and they're trying to like rekindle that romance with Peter Quill, and then they eventually just kind of blows it aside so she can go off and do her thing. He can go off to Earth, which is what he does at the end of this movie. I don't know. It's not storytelling aspect. It's all that stuff. It's just there's a lot of just like mindless numbness that happens in this movie with them trying to rescue and help out Rocket with his stuff, and you never get any development there. It feels like they're so focused on this other stuff that these characters get sidelined. And it's the same thing, like I said, with the villain, where he's just there as Rocket's antagonist, but there's not real substance to him. And it's the same thing with the last battle sequence. It's just another mindless noise of a battle sequence, and I just don't care about that. I don't find that interesting. I find that rote, and it numbs my brain with these character developments. And I just maybe just like tone it down, or have someone die, because no one dies in this movie. Have someone die and give it some meaning and impactfulness, because Gamora dies in Avengers Infinity War, and then she comes back, and it's just like, I get it, you're fine, whatever, but it's just like that's my main problem with this movie. Is just, it's the same problem I had with Volume 2, where it feels like this was a one movie character team up, and that after that it just feels like they're trying to make up stuff that just doesn't feel like it has any purpose. This is what the main problem with after Endgame has been, where there's no glue that's holding this universe together. This movie's about the end of this team, but it feels like we have another problematic issue with, Peter Quill and Gamora, and, Nebula is just angry, and it's just the same tropes over and over and over. It just feels like James Gunn didn't know what he wanted to do with these characters, and it shows. It really shows. It's really troubling, to be fairly honest. It's, the beginning of this movie is Peter Quill is a drunk. He's drinking. He blames himself for why Rocket's in the situation that he's in, and we'll get to Adam Warlock in a second. And it's just, I don't care. I really don't. I don't care about what his plight is. His plight was he messed up, and he has to deal with it. It just feels like it's like when you go to Thor: Love and Thunder, and he pops up, and the Guardians pop up in Thor: Love and Thunder. It's like, why are they even in this movie? It just, I don't know. I really hate what they did with Peter Quill in this movie. And yes, he goes back to Earth, and he finds his grandfather, who's still living even after like 30 plus years or whatever. I don't know. They try to make it more human with what Mantis says to him about, maybe you should go visit your father. Maybe you should do that. And at the end, when they're going their separate ways, and of course Rocket becomes the leader of the Guardians, and so on and so forth. And then Peter Quill goes to Earth, and Mantis takes those big creatures from the Volume 2 and goes off in her own way. And it's just, I don't know. At that point, I was just like, I just want this movie to end, to be fairly honest. I'm tired of like the musical cues. I'm tired of Peter Quill's like constant complaining, and Gamora's constant just like, I'm gonna get out of this situation, and Nebula's like, I hate everyone, and just we just keep going back to Rocket's character. Just have the whole, just make Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 just about Rocket's whole story, just from when. Maybe it should have been a prequel. I don't know. It just doesn't work here. It really feels very bland and overwrote. And then you get into, like I said, the ending with the last credit sequence is like Peter Quill eating cereal with his grandfather, and there's a clever joke on the newspaper about Kevin Bacon and stuff like that. But then you get into the really stupid thing of legendary Star-Lord will return. What does that mean? Does that mean that Chris Pratt is coming back? Like, what does that all mean? Is there a new Star-Lord? I don't know. I think Chris Pratt should just go out and do something else with his life. Stop doing these Marvel movies, because he's just not very interesting as an actor anymore. He's so oversaturated in this world that I just don't care about it. Like, he's proven his self-worth. He's done what he needs to do. He's garnered the respect of the Guardians. It's just, they should have done more with him, to be honest. They should have had more heart. They tried to cram that all into Volume 2, and it felt really rushed and like weird and just strange. And here it is, another Guardians movie with just nonsensical Peter Quill stuff. And the same thing with Gamora. I don't care. So then that leads into the major offense in this movie, and that's of course William Poulter's Adam Warlock character. I like William Poulter, however you want to say his name. I think he's very talented. He's done some really good work in the Black Mirror or Son of Rambo and stuff like that. This feels like a Venom situation from Spider-Man 3 where either James Gunn didn't know what to do with Adam Warlock, or he was forced to put Adam Warlock in this movie. And even after Volume 2, he talked about, Adam Warlock being in this movie. He's a buffoon in this movie. He's a child. He's laughable. He has no real purpose. He gets his ass handed to him twice, like 4 times. He shows up for like 10 minutes of this movie, has one sequence with the Guardians, sets in motion the rocket stuff, then kind of like is on the quest with his mother, who's the Elizabeth Debicki character. And that's really all it is. He gets knocked out. He gets exploded. He falls down. He eventually becomes part of the new Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't care about this character. They need more. This is like when you had Harry Styles pop up at the end of like Eternals, and all these characters are introducing. Why don't you just make a TV show for Adam Warlock? Why don't you just do something else with him? Because it obviously didn't work in this movie. It's so laughably bad and so not funny that I just like. So this is what we're resorting to with Adam Warlock. This is a character that's as mighty as Vision. And you're gonna make this out. This is what you're gonna do with him. Like, what was the logic and reasoning behind that? Like, it's so bad and so illogically stupid that you just like, why would you do that? It's so bad. This feels like Blonsky or what's his face that was in Civil War, the bad guy in Civil War. There's a character there. The actor is very talented, but you did nothing with him, and it just. It's the same thing with the music. It doesn't make any sense. Like, the music in here just feels like a hits of what James Gunn wanted instead of actually like working for the purpose of the movie. And it's the same thing with here. It just feels like it was just put in there as we have Adam Warlock now, and there was like no shot, there was like no like applause or anything for him because he just comes out of nowhere. It's the problem with this movie as well with the editing situation. It's just he comes out of nowhere. Why? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. But they need to do better with Adam Warlock. That's gonna be my fairly honest opinion. And on top of that, there's a typical cameos. Like I said, Nathan Fillion's in this. We see Lloyd Kaufman, Howard the Duck. All the characters we've seen throughout the entire trilogy pop up at some points in here. Of course, like I said, Miriam Bakalova plays Cosmo, which is fine. But in the end, this movie just has a lot of problems. It feels disjointed. The character movements are just, outside of a few characters, don't feel really developed. It feels like there's not enough structure or weight to some of the movies, to some of the moments of characters. The last battle sequence is just noise, and like the Grinch, as he says, noise, and it's just like, cool. I guess it's no Guardians movie. It's like halfway down my list on my Marvel Cinematic Universe rankings. But I know a lot of people like this movie. A lot of people feel like it has heart. It has heart when it does, but when it doesn't, it completely fails as a movie. And that really is shocking from James Gunn because he's a very talented director. But I think he was just done with this series. He just wanted to get this movie out, wanted to tell the story, and just wanted to move on to what he's now doing, which is the DC Universe, eventually doing Superman and stuff like that. So... But with that said, that's going to be my take on this Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 spoiler edition. Like I said, no one dies outside the High Evolutionary, or Evolutionary, whatever he's called. Everybody gets their end moment. And there's a new Guardians group, which consists of Kraglin, Groot, Rocket. Groot actually says something in this movie, which is interesting. A little girl and Adam Warlock, which is weird. It's going to be a weird team up for a new Guardians movie. But that... I don't even think Bradley Cooper wants to come back. I think they're just all tired of this franchise, so I don't know. We'll see. But anyways, with that said, that's going to do it. That's going to be my spoiler take on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Thank you so much for watching. Comments below. Tell me what you think of this movie. If you like it, tell me why. If you didn't like it, tell me why as well. But otherwise, if you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top of the phone. Coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. As always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.